my shoes and out the door. 5, I'm alive. 6, 7, 8, feeling great.
Hello, BYWG Podcast Tribe. This is Dr. Noah. For the month of April 2019, the book of the month is Kate Northrup's new release, Do Less, a revolutionary approach to time and energy management for the busy mom. And the product of the month is BYWG's very own Probiotic Power supplement, which is available with the 10% discount code Probiotic Power 10. Folks, it's case sensitive, so it's capital PROBIOTIC, capital POWER 10. As a reminder, as always, all the links for the product of the month and the book of the month will be listed in the show notes in iTunes, in our weekly newsletter, and on our website at www.beyondyourwildestgenes.com at the Listen Now tab. As mentioned, our book of the month is Do Less, a revolutionary approach to time and energy management for busy moms by Kate Northrup. Dr. Mike had the distinct honor to interview Kate for our podcast, and it can be heard in the month of April through the many channels our podcast is available on, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or through our website at www.beyondyourwildestgenes.com. The product of the month is one of BYWG's truly unique, truly premium supplements, Probiotic Power. Probiotic Power is a shelf-stable, comprehensive probiotic with a whopping 25 billion CFUs in each capsule, meaning it's very potent, and includes 9 of the most beneficial bacterial strains from the Lactobacillus and Bifidobacter families. For the month of April, the 10% discount code is capital PORBIOTIC, capital POWER 10. In the archives of our podcast on our website, you can listen to the comprehensive review of all 8 of our supplements, and in the month of April, one podcast release will be solely dedicated to Probiotic Power. Enjoy the upcoming podcast. Hello and welcome back to Beyond Your Wildest Genes podcast. My name is Dr. Noah DeCoyer and I'm your co-host. As you know, early on in BYWG's career as a company, we hosted 2 online summits that are still available online on our website called the Longevity and Anti-Aging Project and the Pain Relief Project, Natural Solutions That Actually Work. Fast forward a few years to today, one of the hottest topics in health and wellness field is the brain. And why not? A new and exciting summit called the Brain Change Summit is soon to be released, and it is our pleasure to have the host on the show today discuss this topic and the summit itself. Hello and welcome, Dr. Jeffrey Rutstein. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Before we get into your bio and get right down to the meat of the podcast, I just want to remind everybody that all the links to the Brain Change Summit will be in the show notes, emailed out to you, so you'll have availability to check this program out in its full entirety. Jeffrey Rutstein is a clinical psychologist who has specialized in the treatment of trauma for the past 30 years. His approach integrates traditional psychotherapy along with the latest advances in neuroscience and mind-body approaches to address the whole person in a powerful and effective manner. So first questions first, real easy, just so our audience gets to know you a little bit more. How about giving us a little bit of a backstory and flesh that bio out? That's a really modest three-sentence bio. I'm sure there's more to it than that.
Well, when I was a child, I was terribly anxious. And there really wasn't much help for kids back in the day if you had a lot of anxiety. And I also had something called obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. And there weren't medications to put kids on in those days for just anxiety. So my parents put me in psychotherapy, which was helpful, but it still really didn't touch this debilitating anxiety. And so I pulled down a book from my mother's shelf called Yoga for Americans. It was written in the 50s. And this woman, in like the first chapter, I think I was 11 years old at the time, she talks about how she had ants in her house and she wanted to get them out, but because she was the first woman being trained as a yogi in India, she did not want to have to kill them. So she said, I'll put 3 sugar cubes outside for you each day if you'll leave my hut alone and stay outside. Otherwise, I'm going to have an exterminator come. And sure enough, the next day, all the ants were outside, eating her sugar cubes. None were ever in her hut again. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but to an 11-year-old brain, that was like Jedi mind powers. And so I really took an interest to the book because here was a problem I was having, and this person, who happened to be a woman writer, seemed to have a solution. And so at the age of 11, I started doing yoga, in particular yogic breathing practices and yogic meditation. Over the years, as I became more interested in how our minds impact our lives, I went to college in the 70s, where it was just the beginning of the idea that the mind and brain can impact the body and that the body can impact the mind and brain. It's almost ridiculous now because so many of us know this as just a given fact. But back then, there was no clarity about that at all. And so I became fascinated with the early stages of the field of holistic medicine, which was an approach to integrate mind, body, and spirit. And when I went to graduate school, I went to a school that was very broad in its approach. I went to Rutgers in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. And I took a training that was focused on being an applied clinical psychologist versus a psychologist that would be primarily doing research. So I was practicing as a psychologist. I had been trained in most of the treatments of the day, behavioral and family systems and psychoanalytic. And then I started treating trauma patients and started realizing that traditional talking therapy was just not doing these people justice. They were having so much suffering, so much physical and emotional pain. And so it forced me to really learn anything that I could about ways to help the brain and body regulate. And over time, we've learned a tremendous amount more about these ways that we can teach an individual to help regulate their nervous system so that they don't feel so hijacked and out of control, either with rage or shame or anxiety, or with trauma. Individuals, people who suffer trauma, they have unstopping nightmares and flashbacks. And there's ways that we can work with the body and the nervous system that actually help people heal in ways that weren't available 20 or 30 years ago. And so over the last 3 decades, my practice has really been about how do we help individuals who have been hurt in life, either through just normal experiences of growing up or through trauma, how do we actually help them make a complete and full healing of that? And so that's actually motivated my academic and personal interests over these last 3 decades. And I currently integrate my meditation practice, and in terms of what I've learned about helping us become more present, and also how using attention can regulate the body. That's a big part of what I do with patients now in my work.
Ooh, you're really talking my language now, Doc. I'm a practicing yogi for 5 years now, which is probably the other than chiropractic and chiropractic care for my entire life, probably the most significant health thing that I've ever done for myself personally. And you're speaking about the nervous system and the brain, and that's right up my alley. So I'm excited to move forward to this interview for sure. And that leads me into the next question. And you answered it in some ways, but I'd like to get in depth a little bit more. Really simply, Doc, why the brain? Why the Brain Change Summit?
Well, I think that what we're learning about the 1990s was declared the decade of the brain. And our research funding was very generous at the time. And we had a decade, 15 years of some of the most advanced and most expensive studies on the human brain, especially with the newer technologies of functional magnetic resonance imaging. We could actually see the brain in real time respond to certain kinds of tasks or emotional experiences. But this information has really not made it, by and large, to the public. I mean, we know basically about how we should basically keep our bodies running. We should not eat too much and we should move our bodies. But how many people know about the care and the feeding of their brain? And we're learning that your brain is absolutely central to your emotional health, your physical health, your cognitive capabilities, your level of energy, your ability to problem solve, even your ability to cope with resilience, to face tragedies and tumultuous times with the ability to come back to yourself, to be resilient, to bend rather than break. And these are all in the area to get these skills, to cultivate these skills, to learn about this. This is all brain-centered. So we decided to put on a summit that would bring together some of the world's leading experts in functional medicine, neuroscience, clinical psychology, spiritual disciplines. And each of them is bringing forward a slice of the pie, a way of helping us look at the interconnectedness of brain and body, and in particular, the steps that you or I or any of our listeners could take today to start improving their health and start reducing their chances of experiencing physical issues or emotional issues later in life.
Can't wait till this is released. This is going to be released, I believe, sometime late April, correct?
That's correct. April 22nd.
Cool. So I'm assuming most or nearly all the interviews are completed because I'm familiar with the summit process. How about, Doc, a little bit of a sneak peek into some of like the juiciest, most mind-blowing things that you learned when interviewing some of these great minds? And what else do you feel our audience can learn by listening and really diving deep into the summit? Some of the most important things, the most impactful things that you really got out of it.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that absolutely blew my mind was a husband and wife team, Dr. Dean and Aisha Sherzai, have done a tremendous amount of research and work in the field of Alzheimer's prevention and reversal of early stages. And what they have been able to do and find by lifestyle types of interventions and changes is nothing short of jaw-dropping. That even if you've had a family history of dementia or Alzheimer's, even if you've been sedentary most of your life, you can still enact this very vigorous health plan, a lifestyle plan, and it will dramatically increase your chances of not developing Alzheimer's or dementia or pushing it way, way further into your old age. So that was just one thing that really shook me to my core, because up until I'd interviewed them, my understanding was that dementia and Alzheimer's are immovable. Once you get them, at best you try to manage them, but there's no reversal, there's no curing, and there's nothing done so far about, we've had any research on prevention. And the Sherzais are showing us that this actually can be prevented and responded to. Early stages, you can actually heal this. Another fascinating person I got to speak to is Dr. Mark Hyman. Many of your listeners will be familiar with him. He's well known. And he has been talking a lot lately about something he calls the broken brain syndrome. And he talks about a tremendous amount of range of issues that so many of us have, difficulties with concentration, attention deficit kinds of issues, depression, anxiety, poor memory, low energy, not much enthusiasm, not much mental clarity, that he personally has experienced a lot of these, and he has, for the last several decades, treated people suffering from extreme cases of mental and physical ill health. And by changing diet and lifestyle, he has been able to help these individuals overcome, and for many of them, no longer have the physical illness that was manifesting, for example, as chronic pain and inflammation, autoimmune issues. People who've had depression, intractable depression for 2 or 3 decades have been able to find their way out. Now, I just want to say, this may not work for every single person, and some people, for example, with depression or anxiety may still need medications, for example, but this is such an incredibly helpful, optimistic way of looking at that it's not you, it's your brain. It's not personal, right? It's a metabolic hiccup in your brain. And if you can correct this, if there's too much toxins, if there's insufficient nutrients to support healthy neurotransmitters, then if you correct those foundational issues, you actually help bring the brain towards healing. So again, these are just two little tastes of some of the fascinating things I got to learn when I was interviewing these experts. But they're incredibly empowering because this is truly democratic personal medicine. Learning how to understand your brain and learning how to better take care of it is giving you the power to actually preserve and maintain your health. There was another individual who I spoke to, Dilip Jest, a fascinating researcher, Dr. Dilip Jest, and he's been studying the new science of wisdom and looking at what makes wisdom and how does it accrue in some people, and what are the things that we can do to help people at all ages be able, in addition to gaining more information as they're learning, to be also to gain wisdom, which is the capacity to see through experience a larger context for our actions and our behaviors. And so his research is pointing that there are ways to actually help build this pro-social, very helpful quality or trait in more and more people. And as wisdom increases, and he studied all different age groups for this, satisfaction with life markedly goes up. Interestingly, even as people's physical health declined, as they were less able to do things, that their happiness still increased significantly more than when they were well-bodied earlier in their life.
You know, when I listen to you bring up some of these people you interviewed, I consistently think of, epigenetics and lifestyle choices.
Yes.
And, I don't know, I don't want to put necessarily a time frame, but, for the past, let's say, 75 years, we've done as a society just about everything we can to destroy our brain health, whether it's unnatural lighting that's affecting our sleep, whether it's dramatically increasing the amount of sugar we consume, or demonizing fats, which our brain is 60 or 70% made up of fat, yet fat was demonized for years, years and years. And I feel like it's all. I feel like it's swinging. The pendulum is swinging back around the other way. Am I wrong about that?
No, I think that it's absolutely true. I think that we had this idea that, like, for example, if you drank alcohol, right, it just kind of went through your stomach, made you a little drunk, and you were okay. And we're seeing, like, the pleasant inebriating effects are really from alcohol poisoning, right? We have been societally poisoning our bodies and our brains because we didn't know better. And I do think that more and more is coming out, and I hope that this summit will be one step among many that needs to be taken to bring this kind of information and help people understand that you can make in your daily life tons of choices every day that support better brain and body health and well-being, or that may detract from it.
You brought up an interesting topic. I did a little workshop, ironically, for my grammar school teachers about a week ago, and inevitably one of the topics that come up is how about wine? Now, is wine okay to drink? And and my first response was, well, without a doubt, alcohol is a neurotoxin. There's no way we can get around that. However, there's societies, particularly in some blue zones, that drink considerable amounts of wine and seem to live much longer. So can it be a part of a healthy lifestyle? Possibly, probably, particularly really high quality imported wines. I like dry farmed wines and biodynamic wines, but we cannot neglect the fact that alcohol itself is an absolute neurotoxin, without a doubt.
Exactly. And I wasn't meaning in some way that it should be all or nothing, but
right.
The fact is that more people were concerned about driving while inebriated and thinking, I don't want to get a ticket or cause an accident. And people weren't really more and more over the last years, people have become that way. But people are now getting a chance to be conscious of what you put in your body will impact your body and mind, whether you want it to or not. And, that's just as true for listening or reading the news as it is to taking a supplement or, drinking your carrot juice.
Yeah, yes. One of the things that most high-level entrepreneurs and other people in most fields is they do news fasts. They're not fixated on the news because the news is all negative, constant. It's constant negativity. And there's people in my family that I have this discussion with constantly. And it drives me crazy, what you said. It's news, negativity. That cannot be healthy for your brain in no way, shape, or form.
Absolutely. As mammals, we have developed this incredible capacity to pick up signals of danger from other mammals. So if I notice your voice is raised, its pitch is higher, your face is a little contorted, maybe you're darting your eyes around, I know you're not feeling safe, and I'm going to start not feeling safe too.
Right.
And when we are bathed in the news, and again, it's nothing wrong with keeping up with things, but when you're either reading the news or watching or listening to the news, you're being bombarded by constant stories of loss, tragedy, pain, violence, despair, injustice. And there's no way that you can listen to it without your physiology reacting. Even if you're not conscious of having a tight gut or a headache from this, it is still going to put your body in a stress response.
Yeah. And I talk quite about that, being a chiropractor, taking yourself out of that sympathetic overdrive into more of a parasympathetic mode quite frequently, for sure.
Yes. And several of our presentations, one in particular by Deb Dana, who's a wonderful clinician and author, she talks about the polyvagal theory.
Yes.
Which is that's a newer theory of our nervous system. It's a little bit more complex and nuanced than our older versions of the nervous system. And she talks specifically about how so much of our troubles are caused by our nervous system reacting as if the danger is still going on.
Yeah, that vagus nerve, in Greek I believe means wanderer, goes everywhere in your body basically. So
exactly, right?
That's amazing, and that's an amazing theory, and I'm quite familiar with that for sure.
Well, then that's another thing. Then, if people haven't been exposed, and I'm glad you have, but if some of your listeners are professionals or just individuals interested in understanding their own health better, Deb Dana will be able to explain polyvagal theory in a way that people get.
Yeah, that's important. That's very important because that could get quite complex if you're not an anatomist or a clinician or a doctor or taking care of patients, for sure.
Exactly. So she makes it so that anybody listening can get a sense of how their own nervous system works through the lens of this perspective.
Agreed. Now, do you talk any bit about like energy substrates for the brain? And we know the brain needs glucose, but we also know that the brain can run quite efficiently and effectively on ketones. Is there any discussion on that in the summit?
I believe that there is a couple of different presenters who speak about the importance of diet from a brain health and brain perspective way. Yes, including healthy fats, wide variety of foods, though almost all of the presenters were saying that still a diet plant-rich, doesn't necessarily have to be plant-exclusive,
right,
but plant-rich seems to be one of the foundations for a diet that supports the best brain health.
Right, so a diet high in antioxidants, polyphenols, colors, that kind of stuff.
Exactly. High in fiber, healthy fats. And if you do eat meats, a lot of the suggestion is talking about, if you can afford it, organic meats, because again, chemicals and heavy metals can find their way all throughout your body, including into your brain, and they will have disruptive effects on your brain.
Absolutely. Now, I was looking through some of the material on the summit, and I saw somebody who I'm very familiar with, and I was wondering if she was interviewed or just part of some free gifts, Lisa Wimberger.
So Lisa is leading a neurosculpting workshop the entire time. Every day will begin with a presentation by Lisa. I didn't know that you knew her. That's so cool.
Yes, I do.
And this is going to be a practice of helping people so that while you're learning these other things, so this is the structure of the summit. So we'll be running for 10 days. There'll be 3 broadcasts per day. In the morning each day will be this neurosculpting practice to help you reduce unwanted behaviors and increase desired behaviors and attitudes in your life. And then at, I think it's 12 and 4 Eastern, or it might be 12 and 8 Eastern, I'm not sure, there will be 2 presentations. And so each day will be Lisa in the morning, and then the rest of the day will be 2 other presenters. We have 25 presenters in total with 24 presentations.
Cool. I want to hit upon that, the structure of the summit in a second, but I want to just talk about Lisa a little bit more. So Lisa's been on our podcast. So for those of you listening and who didn't listen to that podcast, you could definitely listen to my interview with Lisa in the archives. I'm a huge fan of neurosculpting, and in fact, the yoga studio that I go to in Lyndhurst is now Lyndhurst, New Jersey is now the East Coast hub for neurosculpting. And they do trainings very, very often and have neurosculpting classes every single week there. So
that's so cool. I didn't know that was so close in New Jersey to you. That's great.
Yeah, she comes in quite a bit now because it's the East Coast. And she's from, I believe she's in Colorado now, but I believe she's originally from Long Island. So
she's coming back home almost.
Yep. And one of her big students is one of my yoga instructors, Jody Damerstad, who's got a fascinating story and used neurosculpting to heal from a brain tumor that was removed and the struggle she had after that brain tumor. So,
wow, very inspiring.
Yeah. So I knew that she was involved. I didn't know she was involved in that way. So that's like an enormous bonus in this summit if you get to go through some neurosculpting with Lisa every day for those 10 days. I have all her books on audiobook. I meditate using something called a brain tap because I have really hard time meditating, and I also use Lisa Wimberger's audio tapes and audiobooks and stuff too to help me through. Would you like? It seems like you're very adept in meditation. Would you like to speak a little bit about that before I ask you some of the structure on the summit?
Well, what would you like to know about that? I'm always happy to talk about that.
Well, tell me how meditation fits into a healthy brain. Let's just keep it real simple.
Okay. So first we should talk a little bit about what meditation is, because I think that a lot of people use the same word and it can mean different things.
Yes.
So for some people, they think of meditation as, they're led like on an inner journey, and that can be like a kind of meditation, like a guided visualization. When I'm talking about meditation, I'm usually talking about mental, attentional training. There's 2 basic types. There's concentrative, which gets you to continually bring your mind back to an object of focus, say a word like a mantra, your breath, a sound, an image, a prayer. And then there's meditation that's called open, which is that once you establish some level of concentration, you open your awareness so that you are present to whatever is unfolding inside and outside of you simultaneously, not in an overwhelmed way, but in a kind of calm, present, but openly aware way. If someone learns how to meditate, aside from all the incredible spiritual benefits that a lot of people know about, and there's an unheard of number of emotional benefits as well, that we know that for meditation, practicing these types of meditation, either open or closed, increases the thickness of the neocortex. That's the white part of the brain, the cauliflower part of the brain. It's the most recently developed in humans. And this part first of all, the neocortex tends to shrink with age, and meditation reverses that. You actually can thicken the neocortex. Meditation also strengthens connections between different neurons. In effect, meaning you can use more of your brain, more of the time, in a meaningful manner. So the benefits of meditation physiologically, it lowers stress, reduces respiration, blood pressure, and it can certainly make you feel more relaxed, less overwhelmed, and help you be more present. Those are all great benefits. But it also helps keep the mind very sharp. And it's one of the practices that several of our presenters talk about as integrating as part of this overall lifestyle towards health of the brain, includes practices that are training attention, like meditation.
It's something that I've worked with for myself with some difficulty over the last couple of years, but I'm getting there. I'm getting there for sure. For sure.
Well, good for you. I applaud anyone who continues to try. It's challenging. It's exactly opposite of anything we've ever been taught, and that's why I've been teaching it since 1994. And one of the things that I've learned is that meditation for most people is truly hard. It's nothing like we've been ever taught to do before. And especially if you have anxiety or ADD, or you just have a more tightly wound system, sitting meditation can be extremely challenging. So I really applaud you and anyone who's listening, if they are trying meditation, to persist in it as best you can. And also it really helps to find a good teacher who's been teaching it for a while, because they can help you work with the obstacles that come up in everyone's practice.
For me personally, I've found it very beneficial to work with someone like Lisa. Basically, you're getting talked through a meditation. That has become very helpful. And I mentioned I use a brain tap, which is like a headset, which has blue and red flashing lights and different sounds come in and out of the left ear into the right ear with someone talking like that. I found that to be nearly, at this point in my life, necessary for me to meditate in an effective way. Maybe someday I'll get to the point where I could do it more easily by myself in true silence. But that's, for me, at the stage, that's what I need right now, for sure.
Yes, and you're not alone. You're not alone. For many of us, our inner noise is so loud that sometimes we need some things to help us focus, to help bring us in. That's why for a lot of people, they need movement like yoga or walking meditation, because sitting, it just makes it too easy for them to get lost.
I have intentions of doing, I believe it's called Vipassana, which is silent, like a long-term silence. I have an intention to do that someday, to really challenge myself.
Hey, I'll go with you when you go, okay?
All right. Deal. All right, let's get back to the summit. So you mentioned a little bit of how it's structured. It's over 10 days,
right.
Couple interviews a day with Lisa in the morning. Now obviously you could purchase the summit. Are there free window of being able to listen to these interviews, or do you have to purchase the thing to get all of what's included? How is that structured?
So the desire is the heart of the desire is to get information out to as many people as possible to help equip them. So the summit is structured that every broadcast will be available to view for free from the moment of broadcast and for 24 hours after. Then that broadcast goes away.
Okay.
If you've missed the broadcast, if you weren't able to find them all, or if you're like a lot of people, I do this a lot of times, I pay attention, but I don't absorb everything from a presentation. It's also usually upon second or third listening that I get sort of the deeper levels of what someone is saying, or I get to try the practice that they lead you through again. So again, everybody can watch the summit for free. Every single thing that will be up will be free and watchable for 24 hours from the moment it's broadcast. And then if you feel like purchasing the summit, you get for the purchase price of that, you get all of the lifetime access to owning the recordings. You get transcripts from every single session. You get bonus gifts from the presenters. And you get, I think, one or two major free gifts from Sounds True that are about the brain and your body. That these were ones that had been recorded before that they're throwing in. And I have to tell you, when Sounds True throws in a bonus, they generally do it so that it actually, what you're paying for less than what you would have paid to get the one or two audio programs in this, and you get everything. The summit, the gifts from the presenters, and then those two extra bonus gifts.
So tell me a little bit about Sounds True. My first introduction to Sound True, as I told you before we actually started recording, was when I interviewed Dan Millman. He had a new program on Sounds True, and I interviewed him for a new book that he had, and I got to listen to his program. But that was the only introduction I really had to Sounds True. Tell me a little bit about them.
Well, so like I said, I was studying meditation and practicing alone. It was really hard to get teachers in the 70s and early 80s, even into the 90s on the East Coast. It was very hard to get qualified teachers. And in the 80s, I had come across hearing about this place called Sounds True that had wisdom teachings available, teachings from meditation teachers and yogis and shamans and priests and rabbis, but really powerful wisdom gleaned from years or centuries or thousands of years of practice and study. And so when I discovered Sounds True, it was like an oasis. I found there was a voice. And for the first time in my life, back in the day, I could order these cassette tapes and hear these teachers speak either from all over the world, or Sounds True was one of the first places that was actually also publishing some of their books, but all of their written talks. So it became this very special place to get high quality information from wisdom traditions and from world healing traditions. So I've always loved Sounds True. I have been a happy customer since 1980 something, late 80s. And I had had a dream that, God, I'd love to be a voice for one of their audiobooks one day. And at some point in time, I came across they were looking for someone to help out with their summits. And so I got in touch and I spoke with Tammy Simon, the owner and publisher. And I've been doing summits with them. And I've had a great time because, like, we both have a private practice. You have yours, I have mine. I love my private practice. I put everything into it. But there's very few things outside of my practice that I can believe in with as much integrity. And so for me, it was a real joy to feel like I could do something with an outfit that I knew wants to do things the right way for the right reasons. So they are really established now as a leader in both wisdom traditions, as well as cutting-edge neuroscience and psychology that helps with individuals healing themselves and healing others.
Now, you may or may not know this, but I have the Sounds True app on my phone. Will this summit be available on that app or eventually, or how is it going to be, come into your email inbox kind of that way, this summit?
Great question. So when it is live, it'll be accessed. So if you register, you can register for free and you'll get emails every day, which will tell you when the presentations are, who's presenting for that day, the title, and the links. You'll go through your browser and you'll tune into the broadcast. Afterwards, after we've concluded the summit, May 2nd or May 3rd, we'll go to the process of transferring all of these to a particular program that'll be able to be then downloaded on your app or on your computer.
Cool. Great. All right, so now two simple questions as we wind down the interview. One is a question I ask all of my podcast guests for probably the last year and a half, because I believe our audience gets a lot out of learning people's daily routines, because I'm a big fan of routine and rhythms. I believe that creates more freedom. So, Dr. Rutstein, from waking to sleeping, what is your daily routine?
So I usually wake now at this stage of my life around 6:30 or 7. I spend a few minutes in bed before I get out of bed doing a body scan, just checking with my body before I even move it. And then I get up and start making some lemon water. Eventually we have some celery juice. And I do usually in the morning I do about 10 or 15 minutes of some sitting meditation. And then I have, most days, Tuesday through Friday, I have clinical hours in my office. And so in part of my practice, what I'm doing is I'm also practicing mindfulness while I'm being with my clients all day long. So it's an opportunity for me to practice presence in addition to when I'm just on my cushion. And then in the evenings before bed, I come home, I have dinner. We sometimes will watch something on Hulu. Lately we've been watching America's Got Talent. and then I usually do some stretches before I get into bed, and then I do a body scan and some meditating before I go off to sleep again.
Cool. Great. And how can our audience get in touch with you? What if they're local in the New Jersey area and they want to get in touch with you? How do they go about doing that?
Well, wherever they are, the best way to get in touch with me is my website, which is just my name, drjeffreyrutstein.com.
That's easy peasy. Any last words, Doc?
I just want to say that this has been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you.
And also, I can't highly recommend this summit enough. If I was to design a summit that I think would be a great way of giving quality information so that people of all levels, whether they've had a little bit of education in the sciences about the brain or not, would really be able to take away skills, this is something to check out.
And I agree. And like I said right in the beginning, all the links will be available for you guys to check the summit out. My name is Dr. Noah DeCoyer, your co-host, and you're listening to the Beyond Your Wildest Genes podcast. If you like what you've heard today, please share this with your friends and encourage them to subscribe on iTunes, and leaving a review on iTunes would be the icing on the cake. You can subscribe to our incredible weekly email and check out our new supplement line at www.beyondyourwildestgenes.com. Thank you, and as my oldest son Hayden says, be awesome and never unawesome.